Good morning. Welcome back to day 3 of the DTE Energy live from Mackinac desk. We are excited to have you here as the Mackinac Policy Conference rolls into Thursday. We have a great day here at the desk and look forward to some more great Pure Michigan weather here from the Grand Hotel. So joining me today at the desk to talk about all the cool things that are going on are going to be led by our friend Nick Monacelli from WDIV, and he'll be joined this morning by our normal starter, Richard Czuba of the Glengarriff Group, President and CEO. So guys, thanks for being here, and I turn it over to you for a great conversation.
All right, Brian, thank you very much, sir. I don't know if the intro was good enough for you. The normal guy who's always here.
I'm the normal guy.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, let's talk about normal things that are not so normal. So much has happened over the past couple of days here at Mackinac. Has anything surprised you yet?
You know, I think one of the things that we're talking about here is this idea of common ground. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that surprised me yesterday was the passing of Congressman Joe Schwartz.
Oh.
Because if you want to know where common ground is in Michigan, you could always look to Joe Schwartz.
Right.
And so it's the passing, frankly, of a bipartisan legend in this state. And I think it's a good time to reflect on what he brought and how that reflects on this conference.
Yeah.
Because that's what this conference is trying to do.
Well, there's been a couple of subtitles and subheadlines throughout this talking about Michigan's house is on fire. Not the house, I guess, depending on how you ask, right? Has there been anything that comes out of that we look at the past couple of days of conversations and say, okay, we know we have legitimate problems, but we are at least feeling like we're on the right course to correction?
Well, I think the first step, and from the data we have from the surveys, voters simply don't know we have these problems. And the elevation of these concerns, these statistics, these facts at this conference is the first step. You can't solve a problem if the voters of Michigan don't know it's a problem.
Right.
And so elevating it at a conference like this into the headlines helps voters to understand we have some major issues in this state we've got to confront. Right now, they don't know it.
You and I have talked a lot about literacy over the past couple of days. That's my reason for being here. What do you think the legislature should tackle first on that list of things that voters don't know about?
Well, I think clearly education is one of those issues in Michigan that we can find common ground.
If we can't, we have a real problem here.
Exactly. It unites voters, not just our K through 12, but you know the other part of these statistics that voters don't know about is our per capita income growth. We were once 25 years ago 16th in the nation. Now we're 40th.
Right.
Voters don't know that, and it is directly tied to education.
Directly connected to it.
And so not only do we have to reform our K through 12 system, we have to help Michiganders understand that the future is beyond the K through 12 system. You need more education to make it in this economy.
I talked to Greg from the Detroit Regional Chamber yesterday, trying to put some parallels together so people can understand how this directly affects the economy. And he gave a great quote saying that if you don't start to look in the future, if you don't look to see what the 4th grade reading levels are right now, then you're going to have a downstream problem in the next 5 to 10 years. Do you agree?
I agree. You know, one of the unspoken things here is that Michigan runs on nostalgia, on what we used to be.
Right. We were great at that back in the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the 60s and 70s, Michigan was the center of the world.
Yep.
The world is passing us by because we are clinging to that nostalgia. We have got to see the world, the economy for what it is. These kinds of conferences help do that. And the fact Michiganders need to know we're getting left in the dust and we need to step it up.
If I'm memorizing your numbers correctly, which please tell me if I'm not, but I think I remember that 81% of those polled, roughly 81%, said that the literacy issue is a bipartisan problem and that it's purple.
You know, when we presented each of these statistics to voters, we first asked them, are you aware or not aware? Nobody's aware. So then we said, whose responsibility is it to create a plan to fix this? Is it Republicans? Is it Democrats? Or do both parties need to compromise? Every single one was over 80% saying both parties need to compromise and create a long-term plan. And that's one of the other challenges Michigan faces. We are a purple state. And because we are a purple state, we keep swinging back and forth between policies while other states invest in long-term policies. Michigan's got to rise above its political divide and create some long-term policies between the parties.
So when you see a number that high, 80+%, is that a signal to every single lawmaker in this hotel right now that if you don't get your act together in terms of bringing this state back up to where it needs to be, you might be out of here?
Well, it's not just the legislators. Frankly, voters like to say they want bipartisanship. I want to be very realistic here. They talk about the need for bipartisanship. They talk about the need for both parties to come together until they do.
Until they go to the ballot box.
Until they go to the ballot box and they revert back to their corners, their political corners. We've got to pull people off those political corners a little bit and go back to this idea that you need compromise and both parties have to be part of the solution. You know, at the start of this, I mentioned Joe Schwartz. Honestly, for those who know the history of the Michigan legislature, he was the king of bipartisanship. That man could work across an aisle. We need more of that right now.
Right. I want to talk about Mike Duggan for a little bit, too. He was the big name coming into the conference, and then suddenly wasn't, but still was because people had so many questions about what happened. Did we get enough answers during his speech on why he jumped out of the race?
Well, you know, as someone who was doing polling, watching this race, I think he was very honest about what was happening in the race. And by that I mean, once the Iran war started, voters just flew.
They went to their corners.
They went to their corners. And I like to compare this rather jokingly. You know, the start of the year was like 9 o'clock at the bar. Everybody looking around, flirting with everybody, considering all their possibilities. That Iran war move them back into their corners. It's back to 2 a.m. and it's closing time. You got to make your choice. They're making their choice, and it's a referendum on Donald Trump. And that's not about Donald Trump. It would be a referendum on any incumbent president at the midterm. And right now his numbers are so low, particularly Democrats have come back to the Democratic side, and independents are moving now that way too.
If the Iran war hadn't started, would Mike Duggan still be in this race?
I believe he probably would be. That is not to say this all wouldn't have happened later in the fall, where people go back to their corners, but I believe he would have been in this race yet because the environment would not have shifted so dramatically.
Okay, so talking about environments then, you say going back to your corners, will Michigan ever stay in the middle and vote independent? He took a deep breath on this one.
I did. Anybody who runs as an independent. First of all, we have to understand just how unusual that Mike Duggan candidacy was to Michigan. The highest percentage for an independent for governor, I went back to the '63 Constitution, was 2.6% in 1982. Wow. That's how little an independent gets in this state. So Michigan voters have no experience and no knowledge of voting for an independent. You have to break a lifetime voting pattern for voters if you're an independent. And on top of that, you have to build an infrastructure that can compete with the advantages that both parties inherently have.
And when you say build an infrastructure, that's essentially financing, isn't it?
Financing, get out the vote operations. You know, our friend Adrian Hammond at Grassroots Midwest liked to joke that both parties are a cartel. And they are. They control the rulemaking process. And the rules are biased against an independent in this state. It's a very difficult situation for anybody to just come in. I think future independents, should there be any, are going to, one, need to be very well organized, have the stature of a Mike Duggan, and have a whole lot of money at their disposal.
Right.
That's the only viability.
Okay, so Mike Duggan out of the race now. We've seen almost every gubernatorial candidate here on the island. Who at this point do you think is making waves, so to speak?
Well, I wouldn't say any of the candidates are making waves.
I use that because the waves are right outside.
Yeah, I think they're doing what we would expect right now in this environment.
When does it heat up?
I think it's already starting to heat up. Clearly, the Republican primary, there's an aggressive fight going on, but I do think John James is well positioned in that fight right now. But frankly, this is Jocelyn Benson's race to lose now, given the political environment of the country and the state. Independents have turned sharply against the Trump presidency. That is a sure sign that they are going to be moving in that direction, unless something dramatic changes it or shakes it up.
Where do you see the moderate conservatives after this war?
One of the things we're seeing on the Republican side, and you can see it, for example, in Senate District 35, where we just had a special election, the Republicans are having a problem turning out voters because they're not nearly as motivated as Democrats and independents who are anti-Trump. So those moderate conservatives, those moderate Republicans, they're sitting there not sure where to go or what to do. They don't like necessarily what they're seeing in the presidency, but they don't have an option, they feel, in the Democratic Party right now. So they are kind of people without a home.
Interesting. Yeah. And Mike was hoping to be that home.
And in the polling, he still was that home for those moderate Republicans.
Yeah.
He was taking far more of the Republican vote at the end than the Democratic vote.
Yeah. All right, coming away from the conference, today is kind of the last big day of events. If you are a lawmaker in Lansing, what are your top 2-3 takeaways that you need to go and get back to work on? Well,
first of all, I think you need to pay attention to the conversation going on of the house is on fire. You know, honestly, I've seen some lawmakers since over the last 2 days commenting to the press, blaming the other party for the house is on fire, and that's not the reality. Michigan's decline has happened over 25 years over both parties. That should be a takeaway. If you're blaming one party or the other, you've got the conversation wrong. I think the second thing we need to take into account is what happened at Michigan State yesterday in the loss of the presidency. There is a major proposal now to reform how those board members are selected.
Correct.
Legislators have a week to do something about this if they want to put it on the August ballot. There is a huge push. Governor Whitmer certainly added to that push yesterday. This is a big issue.
What does it look like nationally when our 2 largest institutions are both without a leader?
Well, not only without a leader, but you look at Michigan State, and I'm a Spartan. How many presidents have we had over the last 6 years?
I lost count.
Right. This needs to stop. University of Michigan has their own issues, their own different issues, but we shouldn't have this kind of turnover at our higher education institutions. And one of the things that needs to be reminded to voters, to legislators, how important these institutions are to this state's economy.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up because I don't know the exact poll number, the data, but I would assume that there is a good chunk of voters who don't even look to see what trustees are on their ballots.
No, they don't. If we asked voters in polling, can you name one trustee at Michigan State, one region,
One of the regions,
they couldn't. And I think that's a really telling sign. We don't have these problems at 11 other universities in Michigan that appoint their board members. We need to go to that system. It's a much better system for our higher education institutions.
Yeah, okay, we've got 60 seconds left. For the voters who are watching right now, what should they be most keen on in the next 2 to 3 months as we ramp up?
The next 2 or 3 months, I think it's crucial that the voters of this state ask people running for office of both parties, how are you going to fix the problem? Not blaming the other party. How are you willing to compromise to create long-term plans that don't flip-flop Michigan every time the wind changes? And in the one area I think is crucial is this drop in per capita income. We are clinging in Michigan to this nostalgia that manufacturing is going to carry us out. The rest of the world has moved into different knowledge economy jobs. We need to focus on that and the importance of education to our electorate if we want this economy to move back up to that 16 spot, which is going to be tough to do.
All right, Richard Czuba, the Glengarrick Group. Thank you, sir. Always love your insight.